Kellyanne Conway, one of Trump's top transition advisors. Kellyanne, let's start with the president's agenda and whether he will keep the promises he made on the campaign trail. In his first interview as president-elect, Mr. Trump told the Wall Street Journal either Obamacare will be amended or repealed and replaced. Kellyanne, I got to tell you, I never heard him talk once on the campaign trail about amending Obamacare.
As you know, the House and Senate under Republican control, Chris, have repealed Obamacare dozens of times, but they never had a Republican president to go the next step. I think Mr. Trump has made very clear what his health care plan would look like, and it would not look like the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare. It would do what Obamacare doesn't do, let you buy health insurance across state lines the way you can buy auto insurance and other goods and services. It would block grant Medicaid to the states. It would create health savings accounts for individuals, which is a very free market solution that works in the private sector in many places. And he would also get rid of the Obamacare penalty practically on day one through his tax reform. He also has talked about convening a special session on January 20th after he is sworn in as President of the United States to do this very thing, to repeal and replace Obamacare. It would be a pretty remarkable move. So what you see with Donald Trump is what you get, and I believe that's why the voters gave him this election and this mandate.
But I want to get back to this question of whether he's going to repeal it or amend it, because Mr. Trump said that one of the reasons for his possible shift away from repeal was his meeting with President Obama. Here's what Mr. Trump told the Journal. I told him, the president, I will look at his suggestions, and out of respect, I will do that. Again, President Obama persuaded Mr. Trump on Obamacare?
I wouldn't take it that far. I believe that President-elect Trump is being properly respectful to President Obama. This is obviously his signature domestic legislative achievement, as to hear President Obama say it. But at the same time, this has been an incredibly important issue to millions and millions of voters who have been disappointed in the ill effects of Obamacare. I mean, their premiums have increased. Their quality has gone down. It was a lie. It was a complete lie, uttered dozens of times by the president and others, that if you liked your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. You hear people talking about a lack of access. And now with the Obamacare premium notices coming into your mailboxes and on your computer screens in October, many Americans woke up and said, wait, now I have to make tough choices about everyday affordability when it comes to paying the rent or the mortgage, food, consumables, and my health insurance. So this is an issue also, politically speaking, Chris, that helped the Republicans win and keep the House and the Senate in 2010 and 2014 in those off-year elections. And in 2016, they went for a president who had Obamacare repeal and replacement as a centerpiece of his messaging, including, if not especially, in those last weeks in October.
But I just want to make it clear, there's the possibility that he would amend the law rather than repeal the law. I understand he's going to change it, but he might amend it rather than repeal it.
We don't know, because he also has to work with the Congress, which the electorate also decided should be Republican, the House and the Senate. Also decided he should be working with a Republican majority leader in the Senate, a Republican Speaker of the House. This election was not close. It was not a squeaker. There's a mandate there, and there's a mandate for his 100-day agenda as well. And I got to tell you, Chris, the voters have also said, stop hiding behind divided government. For both sides, and both the legislative and the executive branch, stop using the excuse that you don't have one-party rule where you can actually get things done. That excuse has been removed, and I think you're going to see him take some significant action on Obamacare and on these other issues that he has talked about, like tax reform and defeating radical Islamic terrorism, certainly energy and infrastructure investments, educational opportunities. He's put all this forth in his 100-day plan, and if people read that, they're going to know exactly what you'll get. But this is also a legislative process. He needs to work with the people on Capitol Hill, as will Vice President-elect Pence, to make sure that the results that are effectuated are ones that can actually pass and become law.
Let's turn to the transition team that Mr. Trump has put together. Here's what he said on the campaign trail.
My contract with the American voter begins with a plan to end government corruption and to take our country back from the special interests. We are going to Washington, D.C., and we are going to drain the swamp.
But Kellyanne, the leaders of the transition team that Mr. Trump has put together are all familiar politicians, and the staff includes lobbyists who are weighing in on who's going to run the agencies that oversee the industries that those lobbyists represent. Those are the folks that are going to drain the swamp?
Yes, they are. If they want to be part of the Trump administration, they are, Chris. Look, these are people who are talented and have done this before. You can't just appoint novices. You have to have people who know what they're doing. But at the same time, moving forward, this is an administration that's going to run very differently than typical Washington. Finally, the voters got what they wanted, what they've been begging for 30 years, which is give us the opportunity, give us a person who actually represents the outsider, non-Washington, business experience type of profile, somebody who goes to Washington owing nobody anything. And I will tell you, at the Trump campaign, none of us got rich off the Trump campaign. And I'm telling you, that will continue into the way he runs his government. The gravy train is about to have its wheels blown off and its engine completely ripped from its bearings, because there's just no reason to keep this consultant lobbyist access at such a AXIS at such a level where people feel like their interests are not being served. Part of the rigged, corrupt system that he was giving voice to so often is the one we heard from voters. They don't appreciate all the organs and adjuncts of Washington, D.C. working against them. This is an administration for the forgotten man and the forgotten woman. Nobody thinks of lobbyists and consultants as the forgotten man and forgotten woman.
Well, let me talk to you about one specific choice, because you said yesterday, and you really spurred a lot of consternation and speculation, that the choice of White House Chief of Staff is, in your words, quote, imminent. And a lot of people here in Washington believe that that choice, whoever the president decides on, is going to be telling. The two leading candidates are reportedly Republican Party Chair and insider Reince Priebus and campaign CEO Steve Bannon, who's a fierce anti-establishment critic of Washington. Won't that, Kellyanne, tell us a lot about how Mr. Trump plans to govern, whether he chooses an insider, maybe he still wants to change it, but by using an insider, or whether he chooses somebody from the outsider who really does view Washington as a swamp?
Well, it tells you a great deal about President Trump that both of those men are thought to have very important roles in his administration, very senior roles. And that, regardless of title, that is absolutely what's going to happen. And that is probably the case for most of his very small but loyal and frankly effective senior team, inner circle. But the thing about Steve Bannon that people don't understand is that in this campaign, he's been the general, and he's worked very closely with Reince Priebus and the rest of us as part of that small core team. We couldn't have done it without Priebus or Bannon. I can say that unequivocally as the campaign manager. But Bannon has a background as a naval officer, a Goldman Sachs managing partner. He's been successful in Hollywood as well. And people don't know that about him because it's just so easy, if you don't know someone, to always think of the negative. In fact, if you're part of the Trump campaign, that's what we've lived through for the last however many months. But the two of them, I know, will have very important roles in this administration and this inner circle. And Mr. Trump, President-elect Trump, love the sound of that. President-elect Trump will rely on them and a cadre of other supporters.
All right. When you say imminent, are we going to learn it tomorrow?
Well, imminent means happening soon. As you know, I'm very careful with my word choice.
Imminent means really soon.
It means really soon. And of course, that timeline and that choice belongs to one man, President-elect Donald J. Trump. But look, he's filling many different positions, Chris. I mean, over there at Trump Tower, we feel as busy as we did when we were winning this campaign, as we were, gaming out to win this campaign, bust the blue wall, turn those 197 counties from Obama counties to Trump counties, and grow the party on his terms and his way, which he did. But I have to tell you, we're busier now because transitioning and filling these spots is incredibly important. Folks there are working 24/7, and that includes Mr. Trump. Okay,
let me turn to one last subject area in the time we have left. Mr. Trump also told the Wall Street Journal that one of his top priorities as president is to bring the country together. Here's what he said in his victory speech.
For those who have chosen not to support me in the past, of which there were a few people, I'm reaching out to you for your guidance and your help so that we can work together and unify our great country.
But since the election, there have been dozens of protests, some of them violent, as you well know, across the country. How does Mr. Trump intend to reach out to the protesters and to the millions of other people who are scared of his presidency?
Well, I think he's off to a great start in that victory speech by saying, I represent all Americans, even those who did not support me. And I would say the protesters and those who they supported have a responsibility, Chris, to come together for a peaceful transition and in the name of the world's greatest democracy, and recognize that regardless of what they say, quote, he is their president. And you know, if the shoe was on the other foot, people's heads would be exploding all across the country that somehow the Trump voters would not accept Hillary Clinton as their president. I think the President of the United States, Secretary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, perhaps others can come forward and ask for calm and ask for a peaceful transition and ask their supporters, which are masquerading as protesters now, many of them professional and paid, by the way, I'm sure, ask them to give this man a chance so that this country can flourish. But by the way, Donald Trump's also been hearing in the last couple of days from Republicans that had not supported him. He's received calls in the last few days from Carly Fiorina, from Governor Jeb Bush, from Governor John Kasich. And he's happy to receive those calls as well from heads of state, because you know, he won Michigan and Ohio without the help of the Republican governors in those states. But I can tell you, knowing him very well and knowing his management and his leadership style, he is willing to work with everyone who is willing to work with him, and even those who are going to be dragged along.
Let me ask you about working with everyone, because finally, Senate Democratic leader Harry Reid issued a statement on Friday, and I want to read some of it to you and to our viewers. Reid wrote, "If this is going to be a time of healing, we must first put the responsibility for healing where it belongs, at the feet of Donald Trump, a sexual predator who lost the popular vote and fueled his campaign with bigotry and hate." Kellyanne, how do you respond to Senator Reid?
With complete disappointment. I'm really pleased, as are many Americans, that he won't be the Senate Minority Leader much longer. He has resigned his seat, and we'll have a new Senate Minority Leader. By the way, the Senate Majority Leader will be Republican Mitch McConnell, so that's good for the Republic because we can actually get things done. I find Harry Reid's public comments and insults about Donald Trump and other Republicans to be beyond the pale. They're incredibly disappointing. Talk about not wanting my children to listen to somebody. And he should be very careful about characterizing somebody in a legal sense. He thinks he's just being some kind of political pundit there. But I would say be very careful about the way you characterize it. How's that for working together? How's that for accepting the election results?
But are you suggesting, when you say in a legal sense, are you suggesting that Donald Trump might sue Harry Reid?
No, I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm calling for responsibility and maturity and decency for somebody who has held one of the highest positions in our government in a country of more than 300 million people. I hope President Obama calls Harry Reid today and says, cut it out. I just met with President-elect Trump. Governor Pence has met with Vice President Biden. Right. The First Ladies have met. I mean, everybody is looking for a peaceful transition here in the name of democracy. And you've got the Senate Minority Leader acting like some garden variety political pundit. That's what's got to stop. And you know what? What was the big narrative going into the election, Chris, where most people in the mainstream media were convinced and, in fact, were cheering for, if not aiding and abetting, a Hillary Clinton win? What did they all say? We hope Donald Trump and his supporters will accept the election results. And we have Harry Reid coming out and egging people on. I would put at his feet the fact that a lot of these protesters, I walked right into the firestorm yesterday getting into Trump Tower. A lot of these protesters are not there peacefully, are not there because they just want to express themselves and make a point or make the difference. They're there for nefarious reasons. They're booing us, they're spitting on us, they're causing all kinds of havoc. You know, he has to stop. He has a responsibility. Harry Reid has a platform to do good here, and he ought to rise to the occasion and do that.
Kellyanne, as Ronald Reagan used to say, I think I touched your thermostat there. Thank you. Thanks.
Well, I don't like it. I want the children of America to see decency and honor from our leaders and our elected officials, and they're seeing that in President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Pence, and frankly, they're seeing that in President Obama this week as well, and Vice President Biden. So let's take our cues from them.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. And again, congratulations on a remarkable victory.